And good evening, good evening, good evening. How are you, Dave? And welcome to everyone who is watching at home. Welcome to another episode of Potstilled Live. Mr. Dave Cummins, how are you doing?
Not too bad. And yourself?
Not too bad at all. It is it was kind of a crappy day today, but it's turned out quite nice this evening.
It was one of the random days.
Exactly. I'm looking forward to talking a little bit about Irish whiskey and enjoying a few Tashcons along the way.
Me too. Should be a good one.
Absolutely. For everyone who's watching at home, thank you so much for joining in for another episode of Potstilled Live, fortnightly guide to, I suppose, everything that's going on, at least what Dave and I think is important is going on in the Irish whiskey industry at the moment. Dave, to, I suppose, everyone out there that doesn't know you, do you want to give them a quick rundown of who you are and what you do in the Irish whiskey industry?
I am the Irish brand ambassador for Dingle Distillery and Porterhouse Brewing Company. So I run around the country like a madman, doing all things Dingle and Porterhouse, pretty much.
Exactly, except for tonight.
Exactly. Yeah.
when we're here with a more general Irish whiskey twist. So I'll be digging into your knowledge of the industry as well as we go along. So I appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for your time. So I suppose we have a few people coming through. Mark Roster coming and saying majestic beard. I hope he means me. Don't mind your beard now. I think this lovely bit of fluff is coming along nicely. If you do guys have any questions as we go on through the show, make sure to fire them into the comments section, either if you're watching on Periscope or on Facebook Live. As always, all questions, comments, and a bit of slagging is appreciated. I suppose it's been a busy couple of weeks in Irish whiskey. I know you've been driving yourself around the country a lot, and it's interesting times. But we have probably a good idea to kick off with our sponsor for the evening, which is the Sleeve League Distillers. Now, this, I don't know if you have the bottle handy there, might be behind your head a little bit. We're going to kick off a little the legendary Silky Irish whiskey right here. They sent me a beautiful branded t-shirt you can see here. I nearly fell off my chair. I do appreciate a good branded t-shirt, but this actually is a fantastic quality t-shirt, so I appreciate it, which probably bodes well for whiskey in the bottle. All right. One, I know we were talking a little bit beforehand, Dave. There's one that you've had before.
Yeah.
I think you were one of the early doors adopters of this one as well.
Yeah. It was back in the day when I was in Celtic Whiskey Shop, and I saw pop up and got in contact with Paul, who used to work for MCM back then, and was just chatting with Ali, and I said, going to meet Paul and see about getting the Silky in, because I heard such great things about it, and I just wanted to get it in. Donegal, prospect of first distillery back up there, which was great,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we were saying off camera that you were actually the first person to give me a drop of this in Celtic, I think.
Yeah.
So it's nice to come full circle on it anyway. I don't know if you had a chance to have a sip of it in this lovely Silky branded glass.
I've actually got the dark Silky in the Silky glass, and then I've got the regular in the... Yeah, I was, as I was saying to you earlier on, like I cracked it open last night with a few of the housemates, and straight away I was just like green apples on the nose and palate. And then I was like just looking at the bottle on the back, and the first thing it says is apples, and I was like, straight away it was the first thing you got. I don't know, what did you think yourself?
I think on the nose you're getting a lot of that green apple, but on the palate it's very honeyed. Like it's almost as if it's got honey like dripped into it. Like that malt flavor comes through fantastically on this.
Yeah, it has a nice long enough kind of carry with the malt on it. Definitely. It hangs around for a bit. It's a really easy drinker.
It is.
It really is, like.
And I've thrown up the stats of what's actually in the glass just underneath this there. 2% peated triple distilled malt. There's a little bit of sherry going through it as well. I like, I saw, the moment Sleeve League are doing the kind of crowdfunding, which looks like it's going exceptionally successfully, by the way.
Really well with it.
Exactly. But I know that I saw in a few things they're talking about kind of making Donegal once again the kind of Isla of Irish whiskey producing. I think it's quite cool to see that they've got the peated malt DNA through pretty much so far, all of their whiskeys, but also their new. They just had their. We talked about it last week or last episode. That their first distillation of whiskey distillation in their distillery up in Donegal, and again, I think it was a peated malt as well. So seeing that kind of in a show and Donegal heritage of peat coming through.
There was a big history for peated malt up in Donegal. Like as far as I remember, there was it had a very long history of peated malt up there.
Yeah, absolutely. And the funny thing is, in the 1800s. Established distilleries in Ireland were marketing themselves as like the Inishowen of wherever, and Inishowen was a legal poaching. So, so it to have something of an legal status of such a high standard in the kind of, and it was peated as well anyway at that point. But to have that such high caliber of whiskey making up there, it's very cool to see that return.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And did I hear that they might be putting in a malt floor or something like that to peat the malt or something like that? I thought I heard that one time.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure on floor maltings, but I know that their new distillery is literally situated adjacent to a peat bog, where they actually have taken some of their peat from, which I think was quite cool. So I mean, that could very well be the case. I'm much more au fait with the whiskey in the glass rather than the whiskey that's being distilled right now up in Donegal, but we'll have to make sure to pay a visit very soon. There are a few people dropping in saying hello. Gunther joining us from Belgium. Absolute legend. And Gunther, nice to see you on our show. The last time I saw you was on your show, so that's good. Check it out.
Myself and Graham were on his show. I think it was a week or two ago. It was great, really good fun.
Yeah. I have to say that because Graham just dropped in as well, and actually, he said if I let the beard grow whatever for 6 months, I'll look like you. I won't, because I shaved about 10 minutes ago, and it just becomes, and it was like 4 months worth of growth. If you go onto my Instagram, look at the most recent photo of me in the silky, that is literally 4 months of growth on my face. It just, like, if you look at this, I haven't shaved the bottom of my chin. That is it. That is all I can do. I don't understand you testosterone laden men who have facial hair. We've more and more people saying hello. Kevin, guten Abend all. Matt dropping in from the States. And yes, I have been letting it grow for 6 months. See, Matt knows what's up. But then we have a few other people dropping in. And I think we'll be able to keep going and saying hello to them throughout the show. At the moment, for me, I am going to keep this silky in the glass in front of me. I think you've got what is that, a Capita? You have your I've been
in our Dinga glass, the regular silky, and then I've the peated in the silky glass.
Ah, very good. Well, we'll come to the peated in a little bit. So you take a sip of whatever you're feeling, because at the moment, I do want to introduce our first guest to the show this evening. Who is, I suppose, one of Ireland's new kind of indie bottlers, with some seriously cool success, and probably one of the most friendly and jolly men of the industry as well. So please let me welcome Mr. Dahi O'Connell of WD O'Connell Whiskey Merchants. So Dahi, welcome to the show.
Guten Abend. Hello. How are you?
How are you doing, sir?
I'll put you up here. Jolly side of things, you know. Dave Cummins is probably the jolliest giant in Ireland.
Don't know about that now.
Matt, I have a shaving tip for you. Actually, I was backstage there in your fantastic green room enjoying all the free M&Ms and stuff, and I noticed you're not much shaving. So if you just get a cat and a drop of milk in a saucer, throw a bit of milk on there, and the cat will just lick it clean off. You'll be fine.
There you go. Appreciate it. See, I'm very underwhelmed on my facial hair between the two of you pricks.
You're not missing out. I have to say, you're not missing out.
Yeah, I'm half tempted just to shave the whole lot off at this stage now.
Listen, I tell you what, I've bought 2 sets of razors in my entire life to shave my face, so I am doing well on the cost-benefit analysis, at least.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm not allowed. My missus met me with a beard. I just started growing it, and she said she's seen photos of me on Facebook. She said, "No, you're not allowed to delete it."
I mean, in fairness, it's the same. If anyone knows Michael Cowman, we often give him grief about his chin when he shares photographs of him pre his famous beard. But yeah, Dahi, welcome to the show. I know you're joining us not from your own house at the moment, so I appreciate taking time out of your schedule to talk to us.
Yeah, not at all. Pleasure to be here.
Are you in Ireland? Are you where are you found in the country now at the moment?
I'm away, actually. Yeah, I'm overseas at the moment with the family. So
very nice, very nice. I hope you're enjoying yourself.
Working time, but the family had been away for quite a while, so I kind of, once the new releases went out, I hopped on a plane and came over to spend some time.
Got out of Dodge, got away from all the madness.
Yeah, it's different. I'm in Germany, Munich, actually, and it's just completely different here, you know. Completely different. Everybody's wearing masks, obviously, and all the rules are the same. Rules apply, but the place is open for business. Which is good to see. And like Munich has a probably half the rate or 60% of the rate that Dublin has, and it's 3 times as big. You know, so there's a higher risk rate in Dublin, in and out every day than going to Munich, and you kind of do wonder how it's been managed in Ireland. Not very well, I think, to be honest. Such is life. I have a quarantine now when I go back.
Well, there'll be lots of time to cook up some new releases, because that is, I suppose, what we are here to talk to you about. In the last 2, well, actually, on literally the day of the last episode, you launched your Bill Fill cast strength peated whiskey, and then your 18-year-old PX cask finish at cast strength as well, which also got a sneaky look to have a nice little pack. Refresh, I wouldn't say redesign, but I thought that was pretty cool too. I suppose, give us the kind of rundown on how, there you go, on how they came about being in their cast strength format, this release.
Yeah, so essentially it's the same. Anyone who does know the brand, we launched with Bill Fill, the peated single malt, and a 17-year-old PX single malt last November Whiskey Live, and then from then, I kind of, I had kind of signposted everything. The plan was to keep releasing the Bill Fill, as it evolved, because it's essentially it's single malt from Great Northern Distillery. Everyone knows that, and it was the first batch of the single malt peated distillate that they had. So you're seeing it now as it's evolving in real time. It's not delayed, or there's not any older iterations of it out there. Which is great, and the whole idea is just if there was a right single cask that we could do at cast strength. I'm a fan of high ABV whiskey anyhow, and I don't have a huge amount of stock, and out of all the casks I had, I just went through a few and picked this particular one, I think ending in 9. Yeah, and it just had for me, it had the right feel to it, that it wasn't too far off the 47.5% that we have in the 700 ml bottle as a standard offering, even though that's battings, but it still it shows the DNA of where that comes from, but it's not too far away from it. So some of the others have more, they're just going to be used for vatting. I wouldn't use them as a single cask release. Unless it was a lower ABV or something, but I'm trying to get away from that the single cask will just be down to cast strength in the future. And then with the PX 17, we released in November, and then at that time I actually wanted to release it as a cast strength straight away because it was better. But the economics of it didn't really work. So I brought it down to 46, which was still was as low as I would go with it, to be honest. And released it, and it's the same stock. We vatted multiple casks together, and then we recast them into single casks then with 225 liter US oak PX seasoned PX casks. So I talked to you about them the last day I met you. So they're obviously a more modern cask. They're really, really high quality. You might have had PX in them for 3 or 4 years. They're not, the PX is not being drunk really. It's probably been thrown away or used for vinegar or something. But the result, as you can see, is a really nice compliment to the, it was sitting in bourbon for 17 years, and for it then to go into the same style of cask, the same style of oak, but just with the PX seasoning in it, it's complemented it really well, I think, and that's something that's interesting to explore. And we lost very little ABV, as I was saying to you. So this is the same. It's just that same batch of single malt on the journey. It's a year older age statement. It's only 7 months older in terms of how long it was in the cask against the 17-year-old, but it's come on leaps and bounds. And again, there was a few casks of that, and this cask I actually picked last year that I was going to do, if I was going to do it as a cask strength. It was the standout cask at that time, and it still is the standout cask. And I just said we go with it, and I have another one earmarked if we do a Christmas release, depending on the economy is going in that. But it's not cheap either.
Well, Dahi, I know from I suppose my professional life that purchasing a 17-year-old single malt Irish whiskey is no I suppose affordable manner or activity to undertake. What is the kind of, I suppose, thought process or kind of thinking that you have to go through taking that 17-year-old and putting it into, I presume you purchased the 17-year-old malt because it was a very good stock of whiskey. And was there any kind of worries or anything that goes through your mind when you're putting that kind of rare, valuable spirit into a finishing cask like the PX?
Absolutely, yeah.
Few sleepless nights.
I was breaking it. I was taking what was perfectly good bourbon cask, and I said we need something that's a little different on the market, and I talked to Brian about it in Great Northern, because I don't have the experience, obviously, I have the experience of drinking whiskey, but not doing that else with it. And I was really keen to do a pour pipe, and he just said, look, stay away from pour pipe unless you want to really give it a long time, a few years. So then I looked at the marketplace, and I just saw PX as a nice opportunity. I'm a sherry fan anyhow, so it seemed like a whiskey that I would like to drink. And Dunville's had a PX12, I think, at that time, and you had a Redbreast PX possibly, and that was kind of it. So I felt there was a nice gap there, and that's how I went with it. But first 3 months, not very little change. There was a little hint of the sweetness coming through, and it rapidly improved then from months 4, 5, 6 with the 17, and the difference now is, for me, I don't know if you have a side by side or if you ever get a chance to, then it's pretty vast already. So it'll be interesting to see it as it develops. There's a few more casts of that. So what we do with them, I don't know. We'll see. Hopefully they won't go too far, because that could happen. We could get too much PX from it.
Especially at that age, it could. You never know.
Yeah. Then what do we do with it? Do we end up recasking it into something else to bring it back a bit, take the sweetness out? Yeah. Or does it become a component part in a fancy blend? And that would be expensive. I hope not.
So I suppose for the people out there that don't know WD O'Connell Whiskey Merchants, what is, right, for that little satisfying pop? There you go. I suppose, what is your business model? Because you're not going down the distillery route. So is the life of a whiskey bonder? Look at you in your champagne flute full of whiskey.
It's not a champagne flute. It's I'm not sure what it is, but it was the nearest thing I could get that wasn't a tumbler, so you could see the color. So it's obviously a really Chardonnay color. That's the bill fill, by the way, 59.6%. Yeah, just over 4 years old. So launch it. Maybe a little cheers.
So I suppose, how did you get into the kind of the world of independent bottling then? What is the kind of future idea for the WD O'Connell Whiskey Merchants?
Yeah, so just quickly, I got into it because a few years back I really wanted to own a distillery, and then I kind of had big pipe dreams for a huge distillery down in Killarney, and 900,000 LPA a year, and malt and pot still, and big Scottish style, out in on the Ring of Kerry with the River Lown behind it, and Carrantoul, and very much going to be focused on tourism. So glad I didn't do that now this year. But a lot of things just transpired, and the costs were just mounting, and the workload was crazy. Like the workload I'm doing now, I think is pretty intense with everything I'm trying to do. But if I had a distillery going, I don't know how I would have done it. Never mind the fundraising and the costs and just the stress of having to manage that. So we pulled out of that, and then kept my eye on it. And I kind of saw at the time the landscape change, because my real interest is in finished product, not actually, I don't want to be a distiller. I didn't want to learn how to distill. I would have had to hire somebody to do that. And my interest is in the finished product that gets aged and people drink. And I think 5 years ago, the landscape was vastly different. 6 years ago now at this stage, you couldn't be an independent bottler in Ireland, really. You could be a brand, and you could maybe source whiskey from 3 places at the time. If you were lucky, if you were very lucky, you would have been probably only getting it from 1 place. And so now, when I revisited it at the start of 19, it was definitely a reality that could be done. And I kind of just decided, a few different life-changing moments that this is now or never now at this stage. If I'm going to make a mess of it, I'm 40 at the time, so I'm like, well, I can probably get out of it again if it goes horribly wrong, and get a desk job somewhere.
Yeah, but sure, it's better to try it than not, as the fella says. And the landscape had changed massively in the last 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, I certainly didn't want any regrets. It was kind of my dad was passing away at the time in September previous to that, and it was very quick. It was 6 weeks from start to finish, and kind of really made me. And I just become a dad myself 3 months before that, so your mortality becomes really out in front of you. You're like going, are you going to just wake up and let it all? Are you going to wake up? Or are you just going to let it all pass you by? Or are you ever going to have a go off it? And I was never afraid of having a go. I've tried a lot of things, and some.
It's better to try and screw it up and get up and go at it again than not try it at all.
Oh, yeah, I highly recommend it. It can be stressful. It's probably not for everybody, but it's well worth it. So I ended up here, and I think now is really good time for it. We've got 33 maybe operational. Obviously quite small. Some of them, they won't ever be in a position to be selling large volumes. We've got GND there, West Cork, Bowen, and several others around the country that can produce significant amounts, and a few on Waterford, and they probably wouldn't sell, but there are others coming online. Monaster Evans, really exciting. That's going to be cool, I think. Nice to have Bono involved, obviously. So I think, well, he's better than another high profile personality.
I was only talking about him earlier with my neighbour, actually. Yeah, somebody came into him about it as well.
Yeah, so there's lots going on, so it's going to be good, and hopefully, independent bottling in Ireland isn't something that is common at all. It would have been bonding back in the day, obviously, and that's what's gone. And I'm not a bonder at the moment, so I just kind of went up. My great grandfather, who was Bill Phil, he was a merchant store owner as well, and blacksmith, and I just decided that merchant would be the right thing, because what I do is I buy product and maybe do something with it and alter it and then move it on again. So hopefully buy low, sell high, as they say, and that's what I'm doing. So I just felt that merchant fits me now. I'm not a bonder at the moment, but we are putting our bond application in now for the future. And the plan is we will become bonders and bottlers on our own site, hopefully within the next 12 months.
It's actually one of the things that used to not drive me mad, but I always used to kind of, because I started in the pub trade, and all the old pubs with whiskey bonder, wine merchants, all that across it. And I was like, just wanting, because you'd hear some of the older stories of Ireland and Scotland and that, and of wine merchant bonders and stuff like that, and you'd be like, oh, somebody just, have a go at it again. And it's great to see so many people going to do it now, you know.
It is, and it's
a few pubs are starting to look at it now and think, oh, I should actually probably connect with some of these, and it's great, you know.
Absolutely, you know, like the more the merrier. At the end of the day, we're in the Irish whiskey sector, but this sector is whiskey, so
yeah,
you know, that's a much bigger sector. So that's what we should be trying to eat into, and that's our focus, and that we'll be independent in every sense, that we can bottle, we can bond, mature, you know, do it all on site ourselves and be agile enough to not be having dependencies of, you know, on other players that are there. And
yeah,
because we want to do small things, like what we do is small, and we're so lucky that we have, you know, the guys there in Verries and Clonmel, you know, Matt, to help us out. Like it's you know, we hopefully at some point in time we will do like standard stuff that will get bottled at higher volumes, and we can almost go back to them for that, because that's what they're experts at.
Yeah.
But if we want to do 200 bottles for something, or a half cask, because we want to, you know, maybe I want to do a half cask of that PX19 next year, and I want to keep the rest of it for something else. You know, it'd be nice to be able to just, you know, take it out, disgorge it, bottle it, white label it, and be done with it, you know. And
yeah, it's cool.
More efficient for us.
Fantastic. We're running a little short on time, but I do want to ask you, what was the kind of genesis behind doing the peated whiskey? Obviously, Bill Phil is, you know, I don't want to belittle your PX offerings, because they are amazing, but I think very much, you know, the whiskey on the heart of WG O'Connell is the identity Bill Phil, at least from my outside in perspective. Where did that kind of idea to run with a peated offering come from?
Well, when I just bought the stocks in Great Northern, I was up tasting, obviously, and I came across some nice stocks, and the peated, the triple distilled peated was something completely unusual. I wasn't expecting it, you know. I didn't even know they had peated, and it wasn't even 3 at the time, I think. And I couldn't believe the quality that was coming through in the glass. And I left. My older brother was up with me that day, actually, and I left and I said, we're going to get some of that anyway, that's for sure. That's something different. And the whole thing about this is I want to be a bit different, not like nothing to do with what anyone else does. And, you know, at some point there'll be peated offerings all over, but I just felt it would give us a bit of a platform to be heard and to go on shows like this, or get into malt after a month. We got a malt review within January. We launched in December. You know, things like that. It came to the fore very quickly. So I didn't know it was going to be launched in time for Whiskey Live when I bought it, because I didn't know how quickly it would progress. But in that 7 or 8 month period, it really came on. I couldn't get over it, and I actually did a little fist pump the day I got it in the bottle and cracked one open before Whiskey Live, and it was just, I couldn't believe what was this creamy mouth feeling, and it was fantastic. I was over the moon. I was like, I've looked out here, definitely. I kind of, the guys in Great Northern, Alan Anderson was the distiller back in the day, I think, when it was distilled, you know, all those 4 years ago. And they don't have huge quantities of it, and it's really is fantastic. If you like peated whiskies, you can, and you drink peat regularly, you do see the quality immediately, and it does give many an Islay or Highland peated Scotch a run for its money. I would say, anyway.
So will Bill Phil become a core range of the expressions from yourselves, do you think?
100%, yeah. And actually, the name Bill Phil, because it was my great grandfather, and he was a blacksmith, and he made a tool for footing turf. That's where I decided. Didn't know what I was going to call it. It was very last minute, and you know, serendipitous maybe, and just put it together that he would have made a tool for footing turf or cutting turf, and turf being peat for anyone who doesn't know, as we refer to it in Ireland, and it just felt like a really good fit. And it's pretty cool now to see the Bill Phil name known for something else, and hopefully it'll spread all the world over at some point. And I was going to use it for something else as well, but now I think it's just synonymous with peat at this stage, so we'll just leave it there.
It's a good one.
Exactly. Well, Dahi, thank you so much for your time with your family over in Germany. So I very much appreciate it. Are there any bottles left of either expression, or are they all sold out at this point?
Yeah, I was just going to say, thanks for having me on as well. Appreciate all the publicity we can get. We don't have big budgets, so great to get support from the likes of yourself, Matt, and all the other guys. Doing this off your own bat, really, and your time and your interest in the category. So fair play to you. Yeah, I've got I think so. Celtic whiskey, Carry Out Killarney, Bradley's Cork, 1601 Kinsale, number 21 group, kind of around Munster, and James Fox's. They all have both stocks. They got an allocation, so we sold some online pre-release through our online platform, and then Irish Malts took in a big batch. All their bill fill is gone. They've got PX left only, so there's limited quantities left in all those other outlets that we just mentioned. I hope I didn't miss anyone. Jeez, I got shot. But I think, we only have a small number of stores, and then so if you just go online to our website, we have our stockists on there as well. So
and I'm sure people can tweet you as well if they're looking for specifics.
They can tweet, they can Facebook, Instagram. Some people have my phone number, whatever they need. I'll guide them in the right direction. But it's all gone from me, so I'm quite happy.
Perfect. Well, that's great news, Dahi. So thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Feel free to hang out in the green room or and enjoy your time in Germany with your family. So I'm going
to take a few minutes to chill out here and enjoy a whiskey. And
Exactly. All right, Dahi. Enjoy work. All right, David. That was a lot of fun there with Dahi. What a lovely gentleman as well in the world of Irish whiskey. Probably a good enough time to just kind of skip forward a little bit. We were talking about cask strength whiskies, and this one is one I want to talk about, the legendary Dark Silky cask strength. Now, this kind of coincided with the fact that they are involved in sponsoring tonight's episode. This is unrelated. This has just happened in the last 2 weeks, so I did want to talk about this. I don't know if you saw this online, because there was
I did.
The cask strength crusade are very much I suppose in their element at the moment, with 210 bottles they're released on Sunday of the legendary Dark Silky at 64.5%, if I'm not mistaken, and I think it's sold out in like 16 hours. I think they're trying to prove a little bit that there's market, at least in the home market, for cask strength.
Yeah, there's definitely a demand out there for sure. There seems to be probably there's one or two people we know that are driving it on, but there does seem to be a bit more of a demand for cask strength coming out. And it was fair play to them. They sold it pretty quick, so they did. Yeah,
and as we said, they've been having quite a few successes recently up in Slieve League. So this is quite cool to see. I haven't had the luxury of being able to try it, but we will be trying the 46% version in a moment or two. I know you have it in your glass there. Do you think we're going to be seeing a lot more kind of cask strength whiskies coming in the line in either one-off or more core range expressions, or do you think it'll kind of stay as more seasonal? Just in your own opinion of the industry in Ireland.
Our opinion, I think everyone is going to look at the option of doing cask strengths. I know, we are as well. And it's just, I suppose, if you've got that one cask, especially that you think is something special, you might want to release that at cask strength. But I definitely think there's a market out there for it, for sure. And by the looks of how a lot of the cask strengths have gone in the last while, they've sold well, really well. You do have that problem of, paying a higher rate to get it to that point. But if you've got something special, I do think it's definitely viable to bring it out, on a limited kind of release. And it makes it kind of more special and unique for the customers as well.
Yeah, exactly. I know a lot of people always say they want to be able to water down their own whiskey if they want to, or try it as the barrel intended, I suppose. And there's quite a few people out there who are, I suppose, advocating for that, at least in Ireland. And I don't know about you, but I find that it kind of differs depending. Once you get outside of Ireland, the the penchant for the higher ABV whiskeys changes quite drastically between nations. So it can be kind of an interesting topic. All right.
Yeah, you can have so many different, like each country you go to, it's completely different. Oh, Martin. Martin's our brewer in Porterhouse. But yeah, every country is completely different. That's the thing. Like you go into one country, they'll love a certain thing and they won't like it. And then you go into their neighboring country and it's the complete opposite, you know?
Yeah.
So there's always a market there for different things. Definitely.
I was speaking to a French retailer recently and talking about stout cask whiskies, and it was quite funny. I thought the comment was hilarious that the French have no interest in this because they don't drink stout. And I think the phrase that was put to me was, this is much more suited for Anglo-Saxon countries, which I thought was, in your second language, a fantastic phrase to know off the top of your head. But everyone has those little idiosyncrasies in the home markets. So it's good to see the guys who come out with something a little bit different on top of their successful launch of the Dark Silky, which we will talk a little bit more about. But I suppose if we come back from France to home a little bit, I know one of the things you wanted to talk about was the yields of crops this year in Ireland. Now I know they have had a hard year in crops at home, and it's kind of going to have a roll-on effect all over the country a little bit. And obviously, you'll have a much more direct agricultural background than I would. So, and I'm going to pass as the Jackeen. I'm going to pass on to you on this topic.
Well, I suppose, like, I personally, we don't grow any tillage at home, but our neighbour does, and a lot of my friends would. And just there, the few storms that we had there at the end, a lot of barley germinated again. So we were chatting about there down in Tipperary, Jennifer's husband, he took up a picture where some of the seed had started germinating, and then because of the wind, an awful lot of the seed ended up on the ground. That can't be used. Like, you can't. So the yields are definitely going to be well down. And I know a lot, like even the lads beside me here, they were mad trying to get it in there on Monday because they knew the rain was coming, heavy rain was coming, and if there was too much rain, then the moisture level would be too high. And they'd have to wait. And with the days getting shorter, it's just, it's definitely going to be down. It's going to be down at least a third, I'd say, if anything, this year. It's just one of those things. Like, the lads they're harvesting the barley now, maize, and that will be in another month or so. So that's going to be even trickier. But if the rain and if that kind of, those big bursts of showers, they just completely destroy the land, and you can't trying to drive in and harvest it. It'll make it very, very tricky to save it, that kind of way. But
so, I mean, one of the things I think people forget a lot is that whiskey is an agricultural product, and very much relies on the good harvests, particularly in the home country. I suppose in a whiskey point of view, but then also from your point of view, what are the kind of knock-on effects of a poor harvest of, I suppose, the likes of barley in Ireland?
Price will go up, but it doesn't really. If the farmer will probably still get the same price, but the price for the distillery or the brewery buying it in next year will go up. Same for me on my farm, buying in, let's say, just even straw. That's already doubled for us. Like, last year it was about 40 to 50 euro a bale, and this year the quotes already are 70 to 90. So like it's nearly a double jump. Like, so. Like, I can see that happening. A few people might be okay if they've got contracts, but it can have a really bad knock-on effect. And then just the quality should be okay, but a few bits there might be tricky, just especially with that kind of a few of the things germinating and going to seed, and a lot of it being blown off and left in the field for the birds to have.
So I think this year we had a drought with almost essentially 2 floods after that, and then storms on top of those again. That is about the best summation of the growing season.
So like, it just didn't get going. It's mad. Like some of the fields, they normally, let's say, they'd grow to a certain height, and some of them weren't even getting to half the height they'd normally be, you know. And then, as you said, like the rain came then on top of that, and then the wind came just to make sure, like, and knock a lot of them down. So yeah, it's just, that's the thing with the farming side of things. You are just at the mercy of the weather, and one year can be completely like 180 to the next year. You know, you just don't know what you're going to get.
Well, in fairness, I think Wexford was in drought until a couple of weeks ago, and I kind of reminiscent of our Indian summer of 2018, because I know the crop, I know the crops coming from the maltsters in 2019 were quite out of spec, I think, for a lot of distilleries. I suppose it would be interesting to see what comes of next year in terms of the distilling seasons. Yeah, interesting times. I don't know if we need to call global warming at this point, but definitely, definitely not.
Yeah,
exactly. And do you think that what do you think will be the fallout of that? Are we going to see more imported grain coming through, or do you think it'll be just a higher price for the grain that we already have?
Bit of both, I would say. I'd say you're probably going to have a bit of both, really. It's tricky, and it depends on which variety of barley the people have grown. Depends on the yield and stuff like that. So I'd say you're probably going to have price hike, and you're going to have to import. Yeah, it's just, as you were saying, like the drought 2 years ago. Like, I remember farmers telling me they were walking through the fields and they were running their hands through the barley, and the plant would literally come up in their hand. It was that dry that year. You know,
like the soil was that dry, it would just come out of
that dry. Literally, like, just with an open hand walking through the field, and it just comes straight out of the ground in their hand. Like, so yeah, it is. I definitely think you'll probably see a price hike. You might see, depending on when people got it in, there might be a little bit of change in quality, and then there will have to be some brought in, but there's always some brought in from overseas, you know.
All right. Well, moving on, I suppose, a little bit to what we call somewhat more positive climes. I think it's probably a good idea to jump into our second whiskey of this evening. So I don't know if you have the bottle behind you there, but I certainly do here. So we have the legendary Dark Silky, which is the kind of more heavily peated version of the legendary Silky. For me, I got to try a sample of this a few weeks ago. Now, I'll say I've seen a number of the cast strength samples out there. I was not lucky enough to try the cast strength, but I'm okay with that because I think this is absolutely delicious. What have you thought about it?
It's really soft, really easy to drink, and straight away I get this kind of ginger across the roof of my mouth, like a spice, like a tingle and a spice across the roof of my mouth, and on the nose. But it's lovely, not too peaty, just the right amount. You know, a lovely drink, like very easy drink.
I get a very interesting kind of tobacco on the nose, with almost kind of with this one I almost get almost like two styles of peat. I get the kind of vegetal iodine peat, but then almost a smoky bacon peat as well at the same time. But it just develops really nicely on the palate. I have all the stats running beneath there. Excuse me. 70% maize and bourbon, 15% double distilled in bourbon, 15% triple distilled peated. I think this is quite cool. This is definitely a step up from, I suppose, their original lead expression in that kind of peat realm. And I think it was actually funny because I was reading some of their literature earlier, and it was talking about how the original would make a great cocktail ingredient. And I think actually this would make a fantastic old-fashioned, actually. I was playing around a little bit earlier on, and I made myself a little old-fashioned just to see what it'd be like. And it was almost, I don't know if you've ever been to a nice fancy kind of elevated cocktail bar where they kind of smoke your glass before delivering it to you.
Yeah.
It was almost that effect just inside the glass. I thought it was quite cool.
I did an interesting one years and years ago with a peated whiskey. I did a smoky bacon peated whiskey. So I got streaky bacon and cooked it off and used it as the stirrer for the old fashioned. So you actually had literally like you were leaving the bacon in the whiskey to infuse in with it as you were drinking it. It worked really, really well. Really well.
I actually, you've just reminded me, I used to know a cigar whiskey bar in Pittsburgh in Pennsylvania, and they were huge into all whiskeys. And they actually, they worked with Whistle Pig up in Vermont, and they went to do a single cask. And one of the things Whistle Pig do for you is, if you go do a single cask, is they'll cook you a pig on the spit. And what they did is they actually collected the fat dripping from the pig and then fat washed their whiskey and essentially filtered it out. Definitely under Irish law and European law, that would not be considered whiskey anymore. But being able to try that whiskey was phenomenal. It was an absolute
really interesting.
Well, it was cool because they infused it and then essentially kind of chill filtered the fat and removed it. But it gave this crazy viscosity and kind of it definitely kind of just an elevation on your idea. I think yours is much more in line with the cocktail culture, where theirs is just a little bit crazy. But we have a few people dropping in again. Connor Ryan down in Kinsale tuning in. I'm hoping you're enjoying yourself, Connor. Thanks for dropping in. Chris Hennessy saying the Oloroso peat on this is elevated in a highball. This is a thing that I've been getting into in the last little while, and I was not a big fan of it until basically shown it in Japan. Peated whiskey highballs. I have to agree, especially with a kick of sherry, absolutely delicious. If you want to elevate your White Claw, I've got you. And Gunther dropping in again, as well as Fanula up north. We're saying bar in Belfast serves whiskey with a streak of crispy bacon and a cube of chocolate. Now that sounds absolutely fantastic. I love that.
The way to go. Definitely with peated, always like bacon or something like that. Cigars, it always works really, really well.
I agree. I find that this is even in the smaller quantities, just a 15% of the peat is it comes through in a fantastic way for me. And there's a great kind of, I don't know, almost like a gingeriness or something in the back there with the malt. And it kind of just layers on. And as you said earlier with the other one, easy to drink, but very flavorful. Not aggressive.
Well,
sorry?
Yeah. It's got a good length to it as well. Like it stays there, you know?
Yeah, I wouldn't be shy suggesting this to anyone who likes peat or is new to peat either. You know, it's neither an entry level nor a peat bomb, which is quite cool to see in the middle. Dahi coming in with suggestions to Bill Phil. 50 mils with Club Lemon or San Pellegrino lemon, lots of ice. Now that is something I have never done, but now I am utterly intrigued. So I'm going to absolutely have to try that on the weekend. And there's, listen, we're just getting more and more suggestions through here. But this is obviously a popular topic on the highballs of the peated whiskey. What do you think overall? Which between the two silkies would be your favorite?
I actually get a kind of sweetness off the peated one as well. I kind of dance between the two. I'd probably lean to the peat. Yeah, I'm
gonna have to agree with you on that one. I am enjoying both, especially the light kind of peated with the original silky, but with the dark silky, I'm very much enjoying, as I said, that kind of multi-layered peat that's going on. Neither peat bomb, but also not entry level either. I think that's quite cool. I think it's going to be something a lot of people enjoy. I don't know if it's if we're going to see kind of a larger development on the peat side as time goes on from the guys up in Shreve League. I think that'd be quite cool.
Yeah.
The Isla of Ireland, as they say, or at least on the way. But moving on again, I suppose, Dave, one of the things you definitely wanted to talk about was these tour numbers in Ireland.
Few people bring it up this week. It's just, I suppose it bounces on towards the kind of the bars and the restaurants and stuff like that as well. It's just like obviously everybody wants to be safe and stay within guidelines and stuff, but it's just the amount of business that people are losing is crazy because of it. Like, and it's, you know, we have to stick to the rules and that, but I think one of the other distilleries stuck up like that they have mountains of room and they're only allowed to take 6 people where they could easily social or physically distance 20 people and they're only allowed 6 people in. Like you work it across a day, and some distilleries, depending on their tour price, that can be anything from like €500 to $1,000 or $2,000. Like that's people's wages, you know, and then that's, you're not able to hire in more people to do more tours and, you know, give local jobs. Same kind of thing with the bars, like, you know.
Well, I mean, that is absolutely one thing you'll know firsthand from working with the bars in Ireland. I suppose what is the kind of temperature check of the wet pubs in Ireland that don't have a food offering? I suppose not things looking somewhat bleak outside of just pure tours of the distilleries.
Yeah, they're just kind of, I think they're just, the general consensus I get from calling around to them and chatting to the guys that are still closed, just like messaging them and just checking up on them and see how they are, is just let us open, put rules in place, let us open. If we break the rules, close us. That's it. You know, they're willing to do whatever is needed. They want to get back in. They want to, you know, they're a business. And a lot of these are family businesses and that. And they supply jobs to the local area. And they just want to have rules, get going. And they're fine if someone one of them said to me, if I break the rules, I have no problem. Close me. Close me for 2 weeks. Close me for whatever. It's fine. I just let me open first, you know? So, yeah, I'm kind of like, yeah, we all have to stick within guidelines, but it is kind of, it's creating this fake divide, this invisible divide between the two sides of bars, which there isn't. There's just like, it's all the same. It's hospitality, you know?
Yeah.
Which is, yeah.
Bars with food and bars without food.
Yeah. And this new phenomenon of wet pubs, you know? It's like, yeah, well, whoever came up with the name, but now it's stuck. But yeah, for me, from working in the bar trade, I would have been like, let me open. If I break the rules, close me, but let me open anyway and serve customers, you know?
Yeah. And from the 6 people on the tours aspect for, I suppose, the tourism centres around Ireland, you're looking at a tour guide plus 5 rather than even just 6 people in as well, which is a bit of even a knock when you're below 10 people at that point. That came in with the recent Garda powers for the like of breaking up house parties and such.
And it was just kind of like, it wasn't even like things were booked already, and then like a lot of distilleries had to ring people and say, sorry, we can't have you in because we have to cut it back down to 6, you know, and try and fit them in. But a lot of people, especially down in Dingle, people aren't going to literally be like, oh, I'm here this weekend. Oh yeah, I'll come down next weekend. You can reschedule the next. They're not, like, they're probably gone back to their job or whatever. So it's tricky, you know. And even in Dublin, for like the Dublin distilleries and the Liberties, it's the same kind of thing. A lot of people might be up in Dublin, and it's not as if they're going to be up, you know, 4 days time or 5 days time, you know.
Exactly. And I mean, you can transplant that example anywhere in Ireland, really. You know, I remember previously working a number of years ago, working for Irish distillers. So I just compared the Jameson distiller, or the Jameson museum in Dublin, to the old Middleton distillery experience. You always said you can kind of stumble upon Smithfield, but you go out of your way to find Middleton. And even they could see the difference in consumer there. But, it's the exact same thing at that point, that people are going out of their way to get down to Middleton. Even for the biggest guys in the country, they're still stuck with the same regulations as the rest of them.
It's like, it's grand, put in regulations and that, but it's sometimes I feel, and a lot of people in the industry, especially the guys in the bars and that, and a few of the distilleries would feel, and breweries would feel, that there's people making rules that haven't any idea of what actually goes on. Especially that, you heard that new one there this evening where they have to write down what meal people had now.
And when.
Of it.
Yeah.
And I was like, what has that got to do with anything? I probably it's to prove that they had a meal, but why? Like, it's just.
But even the meal aspect seemed irrelevant in the beginning. A meal doesn't exactly save you from a pandemic.
Yeah.
I think yourself and myself had a conversation outside here before, yesterday. We're saying that in the last weekend they had 6,000 raids on pubs around the country. In the last 3 months, they'd had 32 raids on meatpacking factories. So obviously in a very different scale of, there's a lot more pubs than meatpacking factories, but there's a lot more cases of COVID in the meatpacking factories in the pubs. So it's interesting even seeing the maps around Europe of where indoors and outdoor pubs are open and not. But yeah,
it is. It's very kind of telling against Ireland. Like, it's kind of like going, even like Dottie was saying, like in Germany, like places are open, businesses are doing business. They're just following the rules, but they're letting them, do their business.
Exactly.
I think they do need to look at something and change it. Obviously, keep health and everyone safe, but be also realistic and pubs are open in the north without a problem, as Mick Matthews is just saying there, and that's the thing. Like, it's just crazy. It should be just one kind of what we should be sticking with. What everyone, the whole country should be the one kind of thing,
Exactly, especially the one island. There's a lot of dual rules going on, and I think that's I suppose more idiosyncrasies of Ireland. But I agree, and I suppose there's an entire podcast or Facebook Live on that as well. Michael Matthews, pubs are open up north without any problem, and if you go up north. I believe Monday through Wednesday, you get a tenner off any meals as well.
That rebate thing,
Listen, we'll get there yet. We are running out of time, but I do want to say there's one more thing I do want to mention at least, is the Liberator Irish Whiskey coming out with their batch 2. This one I particularly wanted to mention because batch 1 I thought was absolutely stunning. Coming out of the gates from Killarney. Blended malt, I think the Liberator and Pierce Lyons, actually, I just coincidentally had this behind me, the Marriage of Malt, their distillery exclusive. I couldn't tell you which one came out first, but they'd be one of the first intentional blended malts in Ireland, period. I can't, at least in records that I've seen, find you another one, which is quite cool. Between the two of those, as people might have seen on Potstilled.com, I think the Liberator was absolutely fantastic. Port finished blended malt. This one coming out now, the specs are just underneath the screen there. 22% Cooley malt from 2002. Then 78% G&D 4-year-old malt, and finished between 9 and 12 months in port pipes. This is chocolatey, delicious, malt forward. This is something absolutely fantastic. Batch 1 was. I have a sample of batch 2 coming along to me now in the next couple of days, so I am absolutely jumping off the edge of my seat waiting for that. And they also have a blend coming out as well, which I think will be quite cool. They're double port finish. So this one's quite cool as well. They have, again, the same idea. They have Cooley malt, 2 different grain whiskies from G&D, and then they also have sort of Cooley malt, G&D malt, and then 2 different G&D and Cooley grains put into it. So a lot of work gone into these. Definitely ones I would look out for. And also I think at affordable price points, the blended malt and RRP 65 and the blend at about 49 to 50, I think. Just whiskies I've particularly enjoyed in the past. With batch 2 coming out, I think it'll be quite cool. I don't know if you've tried them yourself.
I think, I was just going to say, I think every person that works in the whiskey industry that I've talked to literally has a bottle or has tried a bottle, and speaks very highly of it. Like, it just seems to be one of those ones that hits the mark with everybody. Everyone seems to, say good things about it, which is, and it's a kind of category that has never really, there's not much in it. Like, there's not very many blended malts out there. Like
2.
Yeah, like it's for
this guy.
The size of the Irish whiskey market, and there's only 2. Like, it's crazy.
Exactly. I've had many conversations with people. I think blended malts have become bigger and better things in the market and the industry going forwards, especially with people, distilleries coming online with their kind of newer stocks and kind of yanking those out and differentiating a little bit. But I think it's
getting a bit older and that they're going to have better kind of aged malt to play with to do something like that as well.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%. Well, Beardy Dave, I don't know, is there anything you would like to leave everyone who's tuned in with us tonight with? Because I am definitely going to thank our sponsors and Dahi, but I don't know, is there want to shout out to the bars or the farmers of Ireland pulling in all the grain?
Just keep at it, keep going. That's all we can do, and hopefully we'll get out the other side of it and just keep supporting Irish whiskey and Irish beers and stuff like that.
Exactly.
Support local.
Exactly.
There's really good stock out there now at the minute across everything, and it's really good to see. Like, from where it's come, it's amazing to see the way Irish whiskey. And I think as we were saying like earlier, like even like the likes of Belfast whiskey and stuff like that, it was just great to see the way Irish whiskey in general, the community, comes together as one and kind of pushes forward. I think that's very important. I think we have to, especially if we're going to knock a few of the other countries down a peg or 2 in the rankings.
Exactly. And it's funny you say that. I think the Irish whiskey industry is funny. I think they have a very light vetting process, and once you beat that vetting process, you become best friends. It's one of the most inclusive. But it's funny because I can see it. Everyone's very tentative when someone new comes in. There's about a 5-second sniffing around process, and then you're done. You're all friends at that point. It keeps going on.
Right. I remember the first time I met you. I think it was the first time I met you, and the rest of the lads were like, "Who's that?" And I was like, "It's Matt. He's Potstilled on Twitter and different things like that, and does whiskey." And they were like, "He's awful young, isn't he?" And I was like, "Good. I'm delighted he's into whiskey and he's pushing it and talking about it. We need more people like that." And then they were like, "Yeah, grand, cool." And that's the way it is.
5-second vetting process. Well, thank you very much, I suppose, to yourself, Dave, for giving us your time. To everyone who's been watching in, to the guys in Schlieve League and the Silky, I appreciate the t-shirt and the glass and the whiskies. And it is great to have them on board. They're doing fantastic things up in Donegal. I like to see somewhere creating an identity like the Isla of Ireland, which I think is very, very cool. And to Dahi O'Connell from WD O'Connell Whiskey Merchants tuning in from Germany, I very much appreciate it. And to everyone watching, just again, thank you so much. We'll be back in a fortnight's time, 2 Thursdays from now. So to everyone, and in particular the guys in Schlieve League Distillers and the Silky Irish Whiskey, a very big thank you. And as Dahi says, good night all and good chat. Thank you.